happy to be here today live for the first time in 3 years. And we're beginning with our favorite chorus in this country, the labor chorus. much for that. Set us all off with a spring in our step. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Museum of the City of New York. My name is Sarah Henry. I'm the Robert A. and Elizabeth Roan Jeffy Chief Curator, and I am also the interim director here. And I think, as many of you know, the Museum of the City of New York has been home for the past 11 years to the exhibition Activist New York in the Puffin Foundation Gallery for Social Activism, where we have been where we have been telling the stories of New Yorkers who have worked to make this a better and more just city over the course of the last 400 years, and many other exhibitions that expand on that story, including a wonderful exhibition that we did called City of Work or City of Struggle. So all that really resonates for us here. We are very proud to host this not to host, but to have been the home of this really important effort for the last 11 years. And we're also proud that this is the 100th year anniversary of the creation of the Museum of the City of New York in 2023. The first museum in the United States dedicated to a single city. And we feel it's only appropriate that New York got that first museum 100 years ago, because we think that we are the most influential and important place on earth, and never more so than now. So we hope that you will help us celebrate this anniversary. We're just about to open a major new exhibition on the 3rd floor, exploring how New York has been depicted through arts and culture, that I think you'll find very interesting. Tons of programs coming up around that, including a look at activism on film, an activism on film series that'll be going throughout this year, funded generously by the Puffin Foundation. So, great welcome to all of you. Huge congratulations to the honorees. We think at 100 we're kind of eligible for this award, so that's just something to think about. And enjoy the afternoon. I know it's going to be a wonderful program. Congratulations, everybody.
So my name is Esther Cohen, and Rachel Bernstein and I have been hosting this event for many years, and we've been incredibly lucky to meet fantastic women like the women on the stage and the woman who's just coming in the door. We have a 5th woman that we're honoring tonight. And some of you know that this is our favorite night of the year, so we're enormously happy to have you all with us. On behalf of the Puffin Foundation, I want to say congratulations to all the women, congratulations to the museum, congratulations to the past honorees, some of whom are in our audience tonight. And we're going to begin our program with a poem being read by one of my favorite writers, Brina Clark. It's a poem by Audre Lorde.
Untitled poem by Audre Lorde. I want to live the rest of my life, however long or short, with as much sweetness as I can decently manage, loving all the people I love and doing as much as I can of the work I still have to do. I'm going to write fire until it comes out of my ears, my eyes, my nose holes, everywhere. Until it's every breath I breathe. I'm going to go out like a fucking meteor.
Thank you, Brina. And welcome, everyone, especially the Imagine Society students. If you saw the posters in the lobby, if you didn't get a chance, check them out when you leave. These amazing students have started to research our honorees, and we're hoping they're going to do interviews with them in the future. Right now, I want to tell you a brief story about Clara Lemlich's daughter, Rita Margulies, whom this night is dedicated to. She called me up in November, and she said, I've been coming to the awards since it was founded in 2011, and I just came back from a memorial service, and a friend of mine deserves an award, but I didn't know it until I went to her memorial service. And I know you never, ever give awards to people who are gone because we want to celebrate people who are here, but can you make an exception? And I said, well, I guess, especially if you'll introduce her. And she said, of course. But then sadly, Rita departed just in March. And so in her memory, we are honoring Anita Weisbord. And to introduce Anita, we have Clara Lemlich's great-grandson, Adam Schaefer, who is carrying on the family tradition. He works on homelessness and eviction issues for the state government in Massachusetts. Adam, we're so glad you're here, and there are a lot of Lemlich family members here, and we appreciate your presence every year so much. Thanks. Adam.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you, Rachel and Esther, for organizing this incredible night every year. This event brings together so many inspirational leaders, and it reminds us that social change is not just a solitary endeavor. It is a collective responsibility that requires us all to stand together, to support one another, and to fight for a more just and equitable world. Throughout her life, Anita, like my great-grandmother Clara and the awardees here tonight, took on that responsibility, even when it would have been easier to shy away. Born and raised in Vienna, Anita experienced firsthand the devastating effects of anti-Semitism. When the Nazis arrived, neighbors began to disappear, families were torn apart, and the fabric of society unraveled. Catholic friends she once knew refused to speak to her, and her childhood as she knew it came to an abrupt end. As the Nazi regime solidified its grip on power, Anita's mother made the difficult decision to send her away on the Kindertransport, a rescue effort that transported thousands of Jewish children to safety in England. In interviews, she vividly described the day she left, the one-year anniversary of Hitler's arrival in Austria. Her mother stood at the train station, and for 4 agonizing hours, Anita watched as the train stood still, afraid to lose her mother forever. Throughout her life, Anita was presented with opportunities to bury this part of her life, but she did not. Safely in London, her host encouraged her to accept Jesus Christ as her savior. Had she been younger and not come from a traditional Jewish home, she later recalled in an interview, it would have been so easy. A new country, a new language, why not a new religion, she said. But she never left her Jewish faith because, she said, if she did, Hitler would have won. This story reminds me of one my grandmother told me once. One day when she was a teenager, she came home excited to tell her family about a new job she had at a department store. But they don't hire Jews, her mother, Clara Lemlich, said, to which my grandmother said she had hid that part of her identity. Clara promptly demanded she quit. No paycheck was worth compromising who you are. Anita carried that commitment to truth after the war as well. Newly married, reunited with her family, and suffering from survivor's guilt, she could have chosen to leave the horrors of the Holocaust behind. But again, she did not. She dedicated her life to educating young people about how hate can spread and how we must not all be bystanders, we must be upstanders. Like Clara, we must all stand up and speak out against bigotry in all its forms. And just like how Clara never stopped organizing, working to unionize the staff at her nursing home, Anita continued educating students until just weeks before her passing, her granddaughter eulogized last year. Anita was among the last generation of Holocaust survivors. With her and their passing, we have lost great wisdom and courage. But because of Anita's tireless work, we will never forget and resolve to say never again. Please join me in honoring Anita Weisbord.
Our next introducer is Cheryl Wilkins. Cheryl is the co-founder and co-director of Columbia University Center for Justice, where her work is committed to ending the nation's reliance on incarceration and developing new approaches to safety and to justice. Cheryl was the person who recommended one of our fantastic honorees tonight, and Cheryl's going to tell us about her.
Good afternoon. I want to first thank Clara Lemlich, her family, and the organizers who honor social activism for the last 13 years. It's pretty awesome. So when Esther and I had a conversation on a person that exemplifies this award, Barbara Martinson's name just literally rolled off my tongue. You know, Barbara came into the prison system as a professor during a time when lock 'em up, throw away the key, 3 strikes you're out, punishment was the order of the day. But Barbara would have none of that. She saw the potential in us all and contributed to the growth of individuals, families, and communities. But the life lessons extended outside of the prison system walls. You know, she developed a wonderful program called College and Community Fellowship, which my colleague and dear sister Vivian Nixon, I hope that we will be able to pass the mic so she can tell you about a program that is still running over 20 years later that supports women who want to pursue or continue their college education. And so that was just one of the things Barbara did, was through education, but it was also through the arts. Barbara was at the closing when I purchased a home. Barbara talks to me about philosophy, sociology. I mean, just lifelong lessons that I continuously have conversations with my dear friend and colleague. You know, she supported the growth of the Center for Justice, still supports, not supported, still supports from day one. You know, we consider her our day ones, and for those of y'all that don't understand what that means that in the very beginning, when nobody believes in you, when everybody is questioning whether you could achieve this mile feat or not, she's our day one. She's been there from day one, and we appreciate and love her so much. I couldn't think of another person who exemplifies this award other than my dear friend and sister, Barbara Martinson. What I wanted to do was not just say what I feel about it. I just wanted a couple of my colleagues just for 1 minute, I know I have 3 minutes, just for 1 minute, just say how Barbara supported you. I see Edna there. Can you come up here, Edna and Angie, and just, come up here and talk about your humble beginnings with our fearless Angel.
I love you, Barbara. I love you. Listen, if it wasn't for Barbara's guidance, support, and belief in individuals like myself, I don't think I'd be where I am. She made a program, she started a program that afforded me the opportunity to pursue higher education. Higher education is the key. It combats recidivism, I promise you that. And over 20 years later, here we are. I thank you so much. Like my colleague, like my friend here, look, I bought a home. I bought a nice home. I'm getting married. Barbara, I love you.
Come on, Angie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angie, and I'm always perpetually late. But I always make it. So congratulations, number one. Number two, I can't even begin to express, I don't think there's enough words to express what Barbara means to me and what she has done for me. But what I can say, one of the things that she did was, most importantly, was see me. She saw me. She saw me in the classroom, first day, Critical Thinking 1, at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, and she saw I was sitting at my desk with a dictionary. Right? And she's like, and I've taken college courses before, but I really wanted to focus and make this work for me. And I said, just in case there are some words that are said that I don't know, let me make sure I have a dictionary. And she honed right in on me, and we've been friends ever since. She has opened up her heart. She's opened up her home. She has just opened up and seen each and every one of us. So I am so grateful to be here, although late, but I'm always here. Yeah. And I just want to congratulate you again and again. Love you. Thank you.
We just want to do one more person, please. She's so critical to our women's movement and overcoming incarceration. Please let her say a word or two, but she can't make it to the stage.
There's no way to quantify the impact that the decisions she's made about what to do with her brilliance and her resources have impacted the city of New York and the country, really. The other night, I was on a phone call. I got a call from the University of Chicago to participate in a discussion group about women's incarceration around the globe. Had no idea who else was going to be on the call. And to my surprise, when I got on that call, 4 of the women that were asked to represent this issue for the United States had graduated from our program at College and Community Fellowship, started by Barbara. That's global impact. because together we're trying to write a statement to address the inadequacies of a document called the Bangkok Rules about women's incarceration around the world. Barbara, your impact is global. I could talk about what you've done for me personally, which is my life would not be what it is today if it weren't for you. But that's not what's most important. What's most important is that the decisions you've made about where to invest your creativity and your resources and your love is going to change the world for women. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just want to close by saying we have a group called Theater for Social Change, and in ending, it's a group of formerly incarcerated women, and we usually end by saying, because of you, Barbara, our beginnings have been established, but our end is nowhere in sight. Without further ado, I want to introduce Barbara Martinson.
Well, I don't think I can begin to live up to that introduction. Thank you, guys, all of you. I have grown up with the story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, the fire hoses that fell apart, the locked doors, the desperate women jumping from windows, those who burned to death. I knew early on that the world is not always fair. What to do, how to behave in an unjust world. Would I step off the pavement to let a Nazi pass? Would I share my portion of bread if there was not enough for all? If I had visions like Joan of Arc, could I find the courage to follow them? Would I have been willing to fight to my death in the Warsaw Ghetto? And if I were Toni Morrison Setha in Beloved, how to become whole again? How to be Paul D, who shared her past and hoped to share her future? There is a saying that you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. Or as Snoop Dogg put it, you can take your boy out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the homie. This saying applies to me as well. You can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't keep her from teaching wherever she is. So, there was a philosopher, Jean-Paul Sartre, who wrote that action comes before being. Our existence is forged by our actions. There was a sociologist, Michel Foucault, who wrote that power and knowledge are two sides of the same coin, and that possession of this coin allows the holder to determine what is true, what is real, and to control bodies, when to ignore them, punish them, lock them up. And there is another philosopher, Emmanuel Levinas, who wrote that it is not action that precedes being, but ethics, the sense of right and wrong. Ethics, he wrote, precedes being, existence. We are elected to responsibility. Responsibility is not freely chosen. One is always already responsible. These three thinkers have defined what I hope to teach, who I am. I imagined that I taught and that those I taught and mentored might coalesce in time into a dynamic, progressive force to establish people-oriented policy and heal the world, or at least our corner of it. In Hebrew, the phrase is tikkun olam, repair the world. As I look out at the audience, including my amazing friends here today, and my fellow honorees, success seems possible, maybe inevitable. Snoop Dogg also said, "The streets will teach you about racism and capitalism and survival of the fittest." True, but that's not the only way. Read and talk to others about what you've read. Think and talk to others about your thoughts. Figure out who you want to be, how to get there. And behind it all, these three ideas: your actions define you. Be aware of the power-knowledge nexus and practice responsibility for the other, the person you are facing. My singing days are long over, but here is a United Mine Workers song. When I mentioned to my loving and compassionate son that I planned to sing to you, he said, "Do it, Mom. Fly your freak flag high." So I could use all the help I can get. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can make an arch, one by one, one by one. And in union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. I'd like to thank Cheryl for nominating me and the women of the labor arts, and remember the Triangle Fire Coalition for this very great honor. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so moving. Our next introduction comes from a leading light in the New York City labor movement. Janella Hines is a vice president with the UFT. She's the secretary-treasurer of the New York City Central Labor Council, and she exemplifies what is good about the progressive labor movement in New York City. So Janella is here to introduce Velma.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great honor to stand before you and to celebrate the phenomenal Velma Hill. I'm not going to read for you her bio. It is amazing. This woman has lived an absolutely phenomenal life of leadership and service, really thinking about how to make the world better, as the fellow honorees, of course. But I do want to spend a little bit of time just thinking about the impact that Velma has had on me as an emerging leader, on me as someone who is thinking about how to make an impact in the world. And so there are three things, or three words, that come to mind when I think of Velma. And the first one is leadership. Velma has embodied a commitment to the labor movement and the improvement of the lives of working people. She is unstoppable. She is relentless. And she uses her fierce and brilliant mind, and has done so since she was a teenager in Chicago, where she was organizing to integrate a beach. She has done this work for CORE, and under the leadership and mentoring of Dr. Martin Luther King and A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin, Velma had the opportunity, yes. Amazing leaders who planted seeds within Velma to make a phenomenal difference in the lives of New York City's paraprofessionals so that they could become members of our union, the United Federation of Teachers. She also held titles in the American Federation of Teachers, the Service Employees International Union, CORE. So she did the work as an organizer and then was recognized and given the opportunity to lead, to continue to expand her reach and make a difference. So leadership is the first word that I think of. And the second word I think of is life. She is physically beautiful, right? You see this stylish woman here. Yes. But it's not just the physical, right? It's a brilliant mind and a fierce spirit and a quick tongue. She embodies life and has taught me that substance and style really can go together, right? Y'all see, right? This is substance and style. We can be bold and beautiful. That is Velma Hill as well. And the last word that I would say is love. It's not just love for working people, and it's certainly not just love for life, and both of those things she embodies. But so often when we talk about history, we talk about the struggles that have been overcome. We talk about the challenges, we talk about the pain. We don't always talk about the happiness and the joy. Velma and Norman Hill are Black history, our labor history. That love story is absolutely phenomenal, and that these two organizers met while integrating a beach, while fighting the good fight, and built a life together, and continue to love, encourage, and support each other while fighting the good fight for working people of New York City, New York State, and this country. That love story blows my mind every time I think about it. And so, it is my great honor and pleasure to present to you, Velma Hill, or on behalf of this great organization, the Clara Lemlich Award.
Thank you very much. I met Janella years ago, and I think I fell in love with her even then. She didn't know it. But I always followed her, and I always cared for her. And I think I'm going to say a poem, and it will be dedicated to her and to my movement family. Now, I did not plan a speech. I decided I would come here and talk from my heart. And I look at Norman, and I know that I love him, and I know that I've loved him for over 60 years that we've been married. And I know that we're a team. Many, many people are not a team. But we decided that at Rainbow Beach, we would try to change the world, or at least a corner of the world. And I guess October 17th, which is my birthday, our book is coming out. And it's called The Climbing the Rough Side of the Mountain. It's an old Negro spiritual, and we've always loved it. And it tells about our history with CORE, our history with the March on Washington. By the way, he was a staff director of the March on Washington. It tells about our CORE. It tells about our various activities. For instance, we defeated David Duke in Louisiana. And we will defeat him now. and all he stands for. It tells about the paraprofessionals, these very, very courageous women who are now a part of the United Federation of Teachers. And it tells about our many activities for 60 years. And I want you to all read it. I was told I was to speak, I guess, 4 minutes or so. But I really want to leave you with the verses, well, no, one verse of a song that I've always sang. And it goes, freedom doesn't come like a bird on a wing. It doesn't come down like the falling rain. Freedom is a hard-won thing. You gotta work for it. You gotta fight for it, day and night for it. And every generation's gotta win it again. Pass it on. I think I could talk for a half hour, but I'll give it to you. And thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring up Jamil McKinstry to the stage, who's going to sing for us now. Jamil is a fantastic singer and songwriter and New York City public school teacher.
Go out and tell our story, let it echo far and wide, make them hear you, make them hear you, how justice was our battle and how justice was denied, make them hear you, make them hear you, and say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles that are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Go out and tell our stories to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only one. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of pen. Teach every child to raise his voice, and then my brothers, then will justice be demanded by 10 billion righteous men. Make them hear you. When they hear you, I'll be near you
That could be the theme song for all of our honorees. Thank you, Jamil. That was wonderful. He really didn't need a mic. Alice Ip is somebody who's been making garment workers hear her, garment workers and their bosses, for a long, long time. And Joy Mao has been using clothing to make people hear her. And Joy is going to introduce Alice this evening. Welcome, Joy.
Hello, and good afternoon. If my voice sounds weird, it's because I've been trying not to cry all evening. My name is Joy. I am a fashion designer and textile artist working with the WOW Project, a women, queer, and trans-led community initiative using arts and activism to grow and protect Chinatown's creative culture in a time of rapid change. Before I begin, a sincere thank you to Labor Arts and the Remember the Triangle Fire Coalition for creating a space for us here today to honor some people who have deeply shaped the labor landscape of New York City. Alice Ip is one such person. I met Alice in 2021 when we collaborated on a project during my first artist residency at the WOW Project. A fashion designer by trade, I came to WOW with many questions about New York's history of garment labor and how the people and place of Chinatown connects with this history. Through a collaborative, community-based art project, I wanted to better understand my own role as a designer and what it means for those working in the industry today to understand the history of work and activism that we come from. The organization connected me with Mei Chen, who's here in the audience today, and she connected me with Alice, who volunteered to help me with my very ambitious garment construction project. A former seamstress in Chinatown's garment factories turned ILGWU union organizer, she arrived at the WOW Project studio with a hot water bottle in one hand and her glasses in the other, ready to help me sew. Over several weeks, we worked together to construct a 200-piece quilted map of Manhattan's Chinatown. Yeah. we then turned the quilted pieces of fabric into a robe, and then we hand-sewed porcelain and jade beads on it to mark the locations of important moments in Chinatown's garment history. During this insane construction, we swapped stories in a mix of English, Mandarin Chinese, and Cantonese. A former opera performer, Alice sang beautifully in between sharing stories about her 3 children, her 4 grandchildren, and their lives in Hong Kong, Holland, and the US. I still speak a little Dutch, she told me. As I listened to her, I wondered to myself, how can one person have lived through so many lifetimes, endured so much hardship with humor and humility? It became really clear to me how much Alice cared about her community and how much her work has paved the way for us today. Alice's work with us at the WOW Project has been an important bridge that connects Chinatown's youth with the lineages that we come from. It helps us understand our context so that we may build on our foundations with clarity and purpose. It has been an honor to work with her, and it's an honor to introduce to you today Alice Ip.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time to listen to me. Many thanks and honor to be here to accept the award. It is also impossible to estimate that someone will still remember me after 20 years of retirement. I'm only 74. I take an early retirement, so I'm not that old. Okay, many people immigrate to the United States with a dream, and everyone has different story and struggle experience. Different ways of thinking and living have different lives. So everyone's idea depends on how they face reality. Here I would like to thank the union and Mr. J. Mason, who hired me, from a workers' representative to a union organizer in May 1982, which has changed my life ever since, so that I can use my strength to help more people. Although the past years and months, I, as a single parent and an ordinary women with lower education. But I never give up. I want to thank God for giving me the magical power to go through those difficult days. I hope young people can see the time and opportunity to move on. Their achievements really depends on their own hard working. Let me pay tribute to all garment workers and immigrant laborers with the poem I wrote recently. And I wrote it in Chinese. And thank you to Mei Chen to translate it in English for me. So let me say in Chinese first. That is in Chinese that my poem. 忙忙碌碌過一生，漂洋過海為何因？為了下代新生活，辛勞工作苦自甘。父謀餐館冇衣業，全家生活有依憑。冇兼數職沒投訴，工會廠內見知心。苦樂參半互依傍，眾志成城係一心。青年應盡識機遇，把握團結學習心。Now I'm going to read English that you can understand. I wrote this because in this February, I lost another crew sister, which is a very active sister, Wai Chen Eng. She's always active and she always, as a team, a team to struggling all those union activities. I thank her and in memory, so I write this poem to remembering her. Living such a busy life, why cross the ocean? But for new life for the next generation. Hard work. Father in the restaurant, mother in the sewing factory. The whole family makes a living. Mother works many jobs with no complaints inside the union factory. Bittersweet, leaning on each other. We are one. We are one. Young people should grab opportunities in the spirit of unity and getting things done. I thank you. I thank you all. May God bless all, healthy, lucky, happy for your all your life. Thank you so much.
You can see why this is our favorite night of the year, right? Our next introducer is herself a New York City institution. Marta Moreno Vega is a cultural worker, founder of the Creative Justice Initiative. She was the founder and director of the Caribbean Cultural Center African Diaspora Institute. She was also a director of the Museo del Barrio up the street, founded the network of Centers of Color and the Roundtable of Institutions of Color. Marta?
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here to give honor to a sister friend. And what do I mean by a sister friend? My mom grew up in Puerto Rico and came to the United States because of the Depression. She was fleeing Puerto Rico, as was my father, colony of the United States. And during the Depression, they came to El Barrio, where you're sitting now, East Harlem. And in that process, they had to make a life. They spoke Spanish, they didn't speak English. And I marvel at the reality of people who have come speaking other languages from other cultures and have forged home. And in the process of forging home, you find family, you create family. And in that process, my mother and my father taught me that many people will come through your life, but they will just pass through almost like boats. But there are those who become friends. Those other ones are acquaintances, they're not friends. And I have had the good fortune, the honor to have as a friend, Angela Fontanez, who we honor today. And what makes a friend, right? Because we hear it all the time, oh, she's my friend, he's my friend. A friend is someone that you can depend on. Someone that is there when you cry. Someone is there when you have your children. Someone is there when you have your divorce. Someone is there when you're trying to be seen. And we are the children of the 60s and 70s, right? When Puerto Ricans were basically unseen. Who spoke Spanish and be black? And understood yourself to be black in a society that didn't understand people speaking Spanish and being of African descent. And I met this amazing woman as she was also developing as producer and creator, right? In the television field where we were not seen, heard, and how do you address a person of power, right? You insist upon creating space, and that's Angela. Angela has insisted on being seen, insisted on being a creator, a cultural creator, and also assuring that we are seen with respect, dignity, and the value of what we bring to the table. And that process many have done from different cultures, and it has to be honored. And we don't honor it in a moment when cultural erasure is the call of the day. So as all before me speaking have said, we have to make ourselves seen, heard, but the action of insisting that we're part of the building of this nation, and we don't build by ourselves, we build in unison, we build in community, we build with friendship. And when you're hurting and not seen, and when you need someone to see you and support you and understand you, right? That builds not only friendship, it builds community, it builds union, because we trust each other. And in that trust, we pass on our knowledge to our children, to their children. So I have had the friendship of Angela as we were both single. We had our children. We are now grandmothers. And we continue to build and pass on. So the honor is mine to introduce Angela Fontanez.
I feel honored to be among you sisters. I gotta say that first of all. I wanna thank the Labor Arts and the Triangle Fire Coalition and the Lemlich family. I wanna thank my husband who got me here from Florida, long, long hours on the road together. Thank you. It dawned on me about 3 days ago, I've been in New York since Mother's Day, day before Mother's Day, that I was born at 115 East 110th Street, not very far from here. Didn't live here long. At 5 years old, we went to Puerto Rico, and when we came back, we came to Brooklyn, and I lived at the base of the Jumbo building, which was then a factory, and the whistle used to wake me up to go to school, the 8 o'clock whistle. A lot of factories down there. Waterfront area, which I didn't know there were some Italians. They had a bakery on the corner. But at 5, a lot of Puerto Ricans were coming to New York. A lot of Puerto Ricans were coming to Brooklyn because a lot of people came and settled where they had family, where they had friends. So I grew up at an early age seeing family, as Malta talks about, and seeing friends, and people sleeping in our sofa, and helping somebody find a job. And, you know, so-and-so might have not, you know, take this plate of food upstairs to the Rodriguez family was common. I grew up just knowing that this is what we do. We help people. We help people that need. Fast forward a little bit, by 1943, there were over 69,000 Puerto Ricans in New York. And They were in my school, but it was a mixed school. There was white, there was black, and there was Latino too. But this was where, unbeknownst at the time, my roots began. Fast forward to '68, there was HEW put out there was formed the Kerner Commission, and their findings led to the fact that there were not, among many things, that there were not enough people of color and women in the film industry. I met a man at a party. I didn't know how to work a stopwatch. I worked in advertising production up until then. But he said, we're looking for somebody. And I thought that it may well be just, I'll have a dinner and then I'll politely tell him I need to leave now because that's as far as we're going to get. But it turned out to be a real job offer. And that's how I began working at WNET Channel 13 at the age of 25, I think, on Black Journal, which was the only black program, national black program in the country. And at the time, what I found out later in doing some research was that I began in an entry-level position, but I eventually became a producer. There was only me in the entire country, a woman of color producing a national show. I couldn't believe it, but I made some calls. At the time, there was no internet, and I found it to be true. My work there, I can talk about the things that I created, but the most important thing that we did was at WNET, we created the Black Journal Film School. Black Journal was the name of the show. And at that show, we trained a lot, at that school, at the show, we trained a lot of people. I began as a student, working during the day and going to school at night and then seeing how to load a 400-foot film magazine, because everything was film at the time. The graduates are now producers, they're directors, they're writers. I spoke to one of them who's very upset that the union is on strike just the other day. In '75, by then I had been producing for a while. I was called by a friend of mine and asked to go on an interview for a show called Vegetable Soup. And it was a children's multicultural program. It was national, excuse me. And I said, what's the position? They said, well, it's a production manager position. And I said, I'm not a production manager, I'm a television producer, I'm a director. He said, Angela, you'll get the chance, God bless him if he's wherever he may be. It's a chance for you to hire people of color nationally. And that's what I did. The first series was $1 million budget, and we did 26 shows. The second one was, I was pregnant with my son, who's now 46. We had reached a $2 million budget. A young white boy, Jeffrey Resnick, was deeply influenced by Vegetable Soup as a little boy, as he told me when he introduced me on the phone. Jeffrey Resnick was deeply impacted by Vegetable Soup. Today he's in his 40s, and he will present on a panel at the Library of Congress, a free public conference, A Century of Broadcasting Preservation and Renewal, on Thursday, April 27th. He made it his business to get Vegetable Soup on, it's accessible. If you go online and just Google Vegetable Soup, you'll be able to get it. I just imagine and wonder how many children's lives we touch, because I know for a fact that in that 4-year period, I hired a lot of individuals and a lot of production companies who are still producing today. In the 80s, it was my last broadcasting job at WNYC TV. And again, WNYC had the first gay program on. It's called Our Gang. Local programming. I did a lot of different programs. A lot of programs to service the community. job hunting. One of my last shows was New York Hotline, where we would show a film that we did in the community about something that was going on, whether it was about jobs or about racism, whatever the case may be, and then we had a panel in the studio, and then you could call in and talk to the different guests that were in the studio. One of the people that worked, well, I'm going to talk about two people. One woman was Maria Hinojosa. You may have heard of her. Maria worked at the radio part of WNYC, and I said, I want a person of color to be my host. And we got her. And we had many fights in the beginning because she didn't want to trim her hair because she had very long hair. I said, you have to look newsy. No. Long story short, she's a Pulitzer Prize winner. She has her own production company. She's a national correspondent. And her beginnings were at WNYC because she got the opportunity to get in front of a camera and show what she could do. Rosanna Rosado, you may know because she worked with Cuomo, and now she's working with your present governor. I can't think of her name right now. Because I don't live here anymore. I live in Ron DeSantis country. Sorry, but it's nice otherwise. Rosanna honored me when she was editor-in-chief at El Diario. And she went on and on when she introduced me about how I taught her to work a room. But so that's kind of nice to have on your resume. I showed Rosanna how to work a room. In the 80s, my last broadcasting job was at WNYC. Also was around the time, well, no, Malta and I started working together like in the, Kizinga my son is 46, he was 3. And we started putting our heads together and doing an incredible amount of programs. One of the things that I did that I am so proud of still is an African folktales book, children's book that I wrote for Malta at a time that I can't write Malta. I don't know, I can't write. I used to write 30-second copy, for TV or a voiceover, but he says, Angela, I know you can do it. That book is still being used in schools in New York. When it first came out, I did a humanities curriculum at a school. And I guess that's maybe when I started feeling like I like school, I like teaching. At 53, I went back to school and got my master's and went into teaching. And one of the reasons I went into teaching was that I had done a film on alternative education when I was at WNYC. And I went to this school where they did collaborative education. I didn't know what collaborative education was. I know that what we taught our students when the college, we were housed in Bronx Community College, University Heights High School. When the college wanted to put metal detectors in, we didn't do anything about it. All the teachers are going in each other's rooms because it's like, where are our students? They were in front of the building picketing because they knew that they had rights and they spoke out. And that's how they got into the school. Are you trying to tell me to cut? Okay. I'm almost finished. And I would say that teaching was one of my greatest, what I still call, I want to pick the right word. I don't want to say achievements, but I have about 300 students on Facebook that I'm still in touch with. And they're also teachers. We'll try not to cry at this part because when I read one particular student talking about how his student went up 3 reading grades, it was like he had won an Oscar. The teacher, my student had won an Oscar. Lastly, I just want to say a few words about my mom, who is my biggest influence. She's 103. She is doing her thing still, but what I learned about being a woman and helping and supporting and never giving up was from her. And so, thank you, Mom. The process of preparing for this award has probably given me the biggest gift I could ever get in recognizing that I have made a difference. I just was busy doing whatever I did for the last so many years, and I didn't know. But I got nominated about a week after my 80th birthday, and it's the biggest gift that I've gotten so far. Thank you.
We have a report from the field, and believe it or not, it's a report about a successful strike. I am thrilled to introduce Rachel Cambry. She doesn't know I met her, but I saw her on the picket line quite a number of times downtown last winter. So happy that you're here, Rachel.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to be invited to speak at this incredibly meaningful and timely ceremony celebrating these incredible women. I'm Rachel Cambry. I'm an editor at HarperCollins, and this winter, along with 200 some colleagues of mine, we went on strike here in New York City to demand higher pay, stronger union security, and a more just hiring and retention process at the second largest publishing company in the country. It never gets old saying that. And neither does it get old to report that after 3 months on strike, from November 10th to February 22nd, we successfully won ourselves a new contract that saw the biggest increase in entry-level salaries in publishing history. So for a little context about why I'm up here and why I'm so privileged and thrilled to be able to be up here with these incredible women. And if I look at them too long, I'm just going to start crying, so I'll continue. I've lived in New York City for 14 years, but in many ways, my roots here are much, much older. My mother was a New Yorker, as was her mother, and many generations of Jewish women going all the way back to the shtetl. My ancestors on my father's side immigrated through here from Albania, Italy, and Ireland. I am the result of 2 long lines of fierce and fiercely opinionated women. As a college professor once told me, yes, that is you get it. As a college professor once told me, Rachel, you could be sitting in among the Joint Chiefs of Staff and have something sharp to say, no problem. So when the time came to decide whether to go on strike, let alone to speak up loudly and passionately about what is on the line when books are on the line, it didn't take much for me to tap into a deep reservoir of righteous determination and say, even to the New York Times, that hurting workers who are predominantly women is a tale as old as New York City, a tale as old as capitalism itself, and one we have learned over and over again can only end in tragedy, or, following tragedy, revolution. The HarperCollins union strike was one in a long line of dominoes that have been falling now for a good few years. As the greed gap explodes, the more workers have stood up to seize their part of the bounty, much to the chagrin, as we've seen, of our resident ruling class. From the WGA SAG strikes across Hollywood and across this country, to the efforts of everyone from sex workers to Starbucks employees trying to unionize their workplaces, there has never been a more exciting time to be in a place like New York City. In a room like this, celebrating the women who have been sowing the seeds of this young revolution for decades. What a pleasure, what an honor, to be here to bear witness to the reaping and to the giving of flowers to these women, Barbara, Velma, Angela, and Olive, and Alice, who have long deserved them. I just want to give you applause for that. Before I go, I want to leave you with one final anecdote. I moved here to New York City from Southern Oregon in 2009 for college. I graduated from the New School University in 2013. The first professor I ever got to meet when I started school was, her name is Cecilia Rubino. Professor Rubino is another phenomenal woman in my life. And our introduction to each other came in the form of her class, Charlie Chaplin, the artist as a social reformer. It was through that class that I learned about, one, Professor Rubino's theatrical activism with the Remember the Triangle Shirtwaist Coalition, It was also in the course of taking that class that I first heard these famous words from Chaplin's Modern Times. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical. Our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. Thank you again, Esther. Thank you again, Rachel. Thank you again to today's honorees for having me on this stage and allowing all of us here to celebrate some of the best of humanity, to celebrate a successful strike because New York is nothing but a union town, and to give flowers where flowers are due. Thank you.
Our last speaker, some of you know that every year Gail Brewer, our favorite politician, Gail, yes, our favorite politician, is always with us at the Lemlich Awards. And when we called her this year to ask her to come, she said yes, and I want to nominate one of my favorite New Yorkers, Olive Freud, who's our last speaker. Gail is at an emergency budget meeting this afternoon. So the chairperson of Olive's board, Tom McCaffrey, who's a forensic psychologist, Tom is going to introduce Olive. And I want to tell one little story about Olive's organizing skills. I got 2 calls in the last 2 days from people who said, Olive Freud is being honored on Friday at 4. You have to come. It's supposed to be great.
So I don't have to provide full disclosure and let you know that I am not Gail Brewer. Esther took care of that, so I am not Gail Brewer. But I am a close friend and collaborator and comrade with Olive in her battles both with developers and at times with the city of New York when it colludes excessively with developers. And I want to point out that Olive doesn't just go after developers. If you look at Sophia's beautiful poster and the other beautiful posters for our honorees in the corridor by the youth group that was good enough to provide that visual help, there's Olive's face looking very strong with huge towers behind her. She's turning her back on those huge towers. Very good picture by Sophia. Olive is presenting her back to the towers, but it's not just the developers and the investors that she's turning her back on. She often has to confront as well and turn her back on, as it were, the Department of Buildings, the Bureau of Standards and Appeals, and other city powers that by negligence, oversight, or other mistakes allow those towers to get too big and to destroy much of our living benefits. For 35 years, I've known Olive and worked closely with her. I'm not the chairman of the board. Olive, of course, is the chairman of the board. I call myself the executive director. If they ask me, what do you do? I'm the executive director. I'd like to point out 2 things that Olive has in common with Clara. There are many others, but there are 2 that came to mind immediately. As many of you know, Clara spent her last 16 years in a home for the aged in Los Angeles from 81 to 96. Her age, 81 to 96. Did she sit back and let the people run the home and take it easy? No. She got the administration to join in Cesar Chavez's boycott on grapes. More confrontationally, she got the orderlies to unionize in the face of the very people who held her life and death in their hands, the management of the nursing home, of the home for the aged there. She organized the orderlies. That's something that Olive has done in her own way. In what I said about the buildings, she confronts the city itself. She doesn't just confront her fellow citizens. Number 2, the Clara Lemlich Award is for social activism, and it's celebrating today, as you have written in the statement, the lives of incredible women whose many decades of brilliant activism have made, what have they made? Real and lasting change in the world. I'd like to point out one lasting change that Olive has made. Besides saving Damraj Park in Lincoln Center, besides adding an exit from Riverside Boulevard onto the West Side Highway to protect West End Avenue from extra traffic, a lasting change that probably none of you know about. She fought that huge building on 69th and Amsterdam Avenue that you may still be offended by. It goes about three times as high as any other building within a mile of it. Much too tall. How did they accomplish that? They went among the neighborhood. Usually you can raise your building somewhat by purchasing air rights from a contiguous property. If you pay for it, you get a few more stories. That's common in New York. What did they do? They had their own little plot of land, and they went all around the area and purchased air rights for about 4 blocks to the south and 1 large block to the west. And these were not contiguous to their property. They were touching like an angle. One corner of this would touch on a property here, and one corner of that. So they were touching, but like hopscotch, all around the area. All of Lincoln Towers had little park-like areas that they, quote, purchased for their air rights, and thereby they went way up. Well, we took them to court. We won at the Supreme Court level, and what happened? A technicality at the appeals level defeated us, but what really happened was the Department of Buildings, as a result of that litigation, changed the wording of their regulations regarding air rights to show that the new, for all 5 boroughs, all new property, it has to be contiguous to the property that the owner has. It cannot be like that building did, as that building did. It has to be contiguous. So Olive, from all of us citizens of New York, thank you for that lasting change in the world. Olive Freud.
Tom, you always were a very good speaker. You stole most of what I wanted to say, but there were a few things that he left out and that I'm going to tell you. First of all, I want to thank those of you who administered the Clara Lemlich Award. It is an honor to be in the company of women who have been recognized for their outstanding service to the community in such worthwhile causes as labor movement, health care, abortion rights, and other feminist issues. It is most gratifying that you are acknowledging my lifelong interest and activism in a very different area, in the environmental issues. It is a sign of the time that we are finally focusing on worldwide issues of climate change, pollution, and in fact, the very survival of our species, and indeed our fragile planet. And at a local level, we can do our share by addressing issues such as park, clean air, clean water, and advocate against density that obstructs sunlight and causes unhealthy, overwhelming, and overcrowding. I share this award with the Committee for Environmentally Sound Development and its dedicated volunteers who attend this meeting and prepare a quarterly newsletter, as well as the over 1,000 supporters who continue to try to enhance the quality of life. That's it. Our organization is concerned with the quality of life in this exemplary neighborhood. It is my conviction that global issues are first addressed in our own backyard. The Committee for Environmentally Sound Development has over 1,000 members, and we have been in existence for over 30 years. Our present officers, well, Tom was one of them, and Cleo Dana, I want to mention her, I want to thank her again, and Judy Weinstein. They're in the audience hearing this. Now, Tom did mention that I got the road changed in Riverside Drive and Riverside Boulevard, and that was a lawsuit that has a lot to do with Donald Trump. That was 30 years ago. He took over the buildings on the west side. He really got his way, but the one thing that he didn't get was that the stipulation was that because of the density of his buildings, there had to be a connection with Riverside Drive, which ended at 72nd Street, and Riverside Boulevard, which also ended at 72nd Street, which went through his new projects. There had to be a connection to those two, because if there wasn't a connection, all of the traffic in his project would be going to West End Avenue. So that was a big win. It was a big win, and it was very helpful for those of us on the west side and using those projects. Yes, Cleo was a great help with Damrosch Park. Lincoln Center wanted to take over the park. It was supposed to be a public park. We went to court on that. We won. And it is a public park. It's returned to its origin. Then the last one, I do want to say this. That was a big fight. The Supreme Court, the first judge who heard our case, agreed with us. We won the fight. You can't do the zoning that was used for 200 Amsterdam. But unfortunately, we lost our battle. The building stands, and we couldn't take it down. I don't know. I have plenty to say about how those things happened, but I really don't want to take up all of that time to explain it to you. But it'll never happen again. And another thing I want to say about that. That building was on the edge of the urban renewal area. In the 1960s, it was a good idea. They said the slums are awful. We'll tear them down, and we're going to put up houses that'll be in a park. They're going to have grass around them and parking space, and they're all over the city. There's a lot on Madison Avenue, there are on Queens, and so forth and so on. Well, this developer had his idea of what zoning was, and he was going to use some of the parks, some of the driveways, to make a bigger zoning area and build bigger buildings. We won the lawsuit in the sense that the Department of Buildings made very clear what the intentions were. We're still in business. I get calls all the time from other groups, who want to know about my expertise. I don't know what it was, my expertise. I think it's more that my committee just wouldn't take it and wanted to fight. Right now, someone just called me from 8th Avenue and 46th Street that they're digging a big hole and they want over 1,000 foot building. That means over 100 stories. And I helped him a little bit. I got him a lawyer and a land use. We'll see where that goes. One of the other things that I want to mention, since we've been in business for a long time, and what's terrible is the density and the tall buildings that are going on. And at one time, there were more artistic people, or there are still artistic people in it. We put together a brochure, and I have a few of them I think you'd like to see. It's called A Case Against Tall Buildings and the Virtue of Recycling Old Ones. We went through the city and found old buildings that had been repurposed and used for something else. You can see the cover. The famous one is the Jefferson Market, but there's a whole lot of stories in there. And we did the research, who the architects were, what the buildings had gone through, and they're over 100 years. And we put this out. People still try to get this brochure. Is my time up?
Your time is
up. All right. If you want to, I have a few, you can take a look at them. But I'm glad that I have an audience to talk to. I know what I'm saying is a little different than what the other people did, but the world goes on, and there are different problems in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olive. That was wonderful. We want to thank the 21st Century ILGW Heritage Fund, which funded this event tonight in great part. And yay! And let you know that interviews with our honorees and film from tonight will be on the Labor Arts website in about a month or so check it out. Penguin Publishers donated a book about Clara Lemlich, a chapter book for middle schoolers by Deborah Heiligman, who's here in the audience. Somehow the box is in transit, but we have copies for our honorees and copies for all of the Imagine Society students who are here, and we urge everybody else who has a middle schooler or a young person to check out a little book about Clara Lemlich that is absolutely perfectly well done as a history. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce somebody who is not Edgar Romney, and she'll take it from there.
Okay, so Velma, Alice, Angela, Olive, Barbara, can we give it up for them, please? Oh my God, seriously. Thank you all. What an event. Yeah, I've been choked up too, Rachel. Thank you all. Thank you. We're going to wrap this event with the voice of Jamil. Did you love hearing him before? Oh my gosh, can't wait to hear him again. I just have to say that one of the things that all of these women share, Clara Lemlich shared, they're visionaries, but they take action, okay? You can see what needs to be done and sit back and complain. They took action. Clara took action. She saw that the garment shops were dangerous fire traps, and she said, I vote we go out on strike. The uprising of the 20,000 happened. Unfortunately, the workers at the Triangle factory were not able to break their strike, or they had their strike broken, and we know then about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire and the deaths that ensued, and the uproar, the outrage. Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers said, this is a cosmopolitan, modern city. We send our sons and daughters to work, and their greatest crime is that they showed up that day. So I'm with the Remember the Triangle Fire Coalition, and I am here to tell you you're among some of the first people to learn this news. We are going to be installing on October 11th the Triangle Fire Memorial. We've been working for 12 years to get it done. Thank you all. You're all the ones who made this possible. Listening to the Mine Workers song, listening to We Are One, listening to Get It Done. We've been working for 12 years. We didn't give up. We never stopped. We knew that our generation was going to get this done. They wanted to get it done back in 1911, but they were trying to save lives. They were trying to stop other fires from happening. So for all of you who care, who know this history, and I think this room is filled with people who understand this history, please do come in October. The world needs to know this history so we don't repeat it. And unfortunately, a lot of OSHA regulations are being rolled back. Construction workers are dying. Worker safety is real, and it needs to be fought for every generation. It's funny how, the bosses, the capitalist machinery forgets history. Oh, we don't need worker safety laws. We don't need to protect workers. So keep fighting. And I'm here to say, if you'd like to continue donating to the Remember the Triangle Fire Coalition, we still have bills to pay to get that done. And of course, to Labor Arts, the wonderful organization that brought this all together and to fruition. So thank you all so much. We're just so grateful. And I'm sorry Edgar Romney couldn't be here because he's on my board with the Triangle Fire Coalition. He'd be saying a lot of the same stuff. So, it's okay. But you got to come back again next year. And finally, please look. If you haven't gotten one, you can get one out front or I'll get you one. It's an I Am Here card. If you can fill that out, I'll come around and collect them. And I guess we're going to bring Jamil back to the stage now. Jamil, please come. And everybody, please help me to welcome him back because he is amazing.
Good evening, everyone. I'm inspired, and I've been inspired all evening, and I want to close with this little light of mine. Is that all right? Can we do it? I don't have a choir, so we're going to make a choir. Is that all right? Can we do that? Cool. So here's this little light of mine.